I'll be honest with you. Content creation is really exhausting. It's really tiring. That sounds kind of extreme. It's just trying to figure out the format of the platform or what it is that I'm trying to do here. That almost sounds, like a crisis of identity. It's not. It's more so just kind of like, how do I best package up, all of these thoughts and ideas into a more palpable way. That's definitely been kind of the trickier thing here. And I think I'm just kind of experimenting with a new, I guess, call it a format. I do miss the long form format of the show, I guess. And so I'm trying to figure out kind of, how to go about that, and kind of what I've created for today's episode is really just a list of a bunch of questions from Chat GPT to kind of help kickstart some ideas and just try to get the ideas going and just kind of see where I gravitate towards and see what we can kind of explore, I guess, within that particular topic. So maybe this format will work out well, maybe it won't. Who knows? Still kind of experimenting with this. And I mean, even before I start, it's kind of weird. It's, what is it? It's August, and I started this thing back in July, and it's been really interesting to kind of see how many times it's changed in terms of the format, I guess. And actually, I guess even the structure of just what FrameFound is from an identity perspective is definitely interesting. It's very weird that as I'm recording this show, kind of thinking back to all of that, and I don't know. I think hopefully, kind of my goal here is to just maintain a discipline of sorts to just keep making content. And that I just feel like saying the word content feels like a cringy thing. I gotta eventually find a different term, but I'm just trying to just keep creating things. I think that's been kind of my goal for the past, it's been really, my top of mind thought for at least the past, call it a month or so, is just what is the best way to go about making things, oftenly, and how quickly can I create those things. And maybe I won't even get into the questions that I have on screen right here, because I am kind of having fun, exploring this kind of thought. But yeah, it's been really weird trying to figure out the best way to generate content, and I'll just keep saying that, whatever. Trying to figure out, just before it was always like, okay, let's try to find a theme, and then we can ask some questions about that to pull on threads and whatnot. And I started to find that it got kind of exhausting for me, because I was essentially just trying to write a script and trying to speak in a way that was as compelling as possible. And then, I started to experiment with creating shorts and cut downs, and it's just, all of it was trying really hard to be baity and stuff. And I think that's something I really didn't like about where I was heading with all of this. And so I've been trying to figure out, I'm like, what's the format, or how is there a way that I can just essentially wake up every day and just turn on the camera and talk to it and just kind of see where it goes? I guess it's more akin to a vlog of sorts, where actually I don't really even know what the definition of a vlog is, but I don't know. I kind of hope maybe this goes somewhere. But to move into kind of a separate thought, just trying to figure out how to operationalize all of this has been really interesting. And not to say looking online at other content creators and what their, and I hate even saying this term, but workflow is. I feel like that's just a really overused word these days, or maybe it's just said by a bunch of kind of cringy folks in a cringe-like way. And I don't know. It's been kind of cool to figure out how to use certain tools and platforms like AI to kind of streamline all of this stuff. Kind of working with ChatGPT is kind of like a producer of sorts for me to kind of help generate ideas for. ChatGPT is also kind of my strategist or like editor. Well, it's my strategist and kind of my editor. I guess I don't know, maybe this is just the thing. Let's just talk about the details of this thing, or this point that I'm trying to make, is that like ChatGPT, the tools that I use are ChatGPT and Descript for my editing. And between those two, what I've got Chat doing is kind of acting as my producer of sorts. So I'm kind of, I'm generating ideas and kind of outlines and, kind of explaining to it like what's on my mind. How can I kind of turn that into an outline for an episode of sorts, or some sort of prompting questions for it. And then once I film an episode, then I'm putting that episode on to Descript, and from there it's creating this transcription of the recording, and then I'm giving that transcription back to ChatGPT, and I'm asking for it to kind of generate some paper cuts, right? So like from the long form episode, do you think that there's anything in here that's worth talking about? And from there, ChatGPT will then generate some instructions that I can then give to, and it's kind of an extreme name, Underlord, which is the AI for Descript. And then, from there, Underlord generates all of these separate compositions, which are essentially my shorts. And then I've got, a layout pack in Descript that just quickly adds, my titling and my captioning. And then even then, so ChatGPT will also generate my post copy. So like, what should the title be for YouTube, and for like the description copy and LinkedIn and all that. So it's a pretty cool kind of tech stack, I guess you could say, or a configuration of sorts. It's when I've gotten a good night's rest and I'm kind of amped and pumped. I think it was 2 days ago I generated 9 pieces of content or shorts, which I thought was pretty sweet. And it's been interesting to kind of put all that stuff out there online. And it's kind of, it's interesting to see what resonates with folks and what doesn't. And I talk about a lot of niche things on this show or on this platform or whatever. And yeah, it's just kind of cool to see what works and what doesn't. And I can't help but feel since I started to kind of post a lot more shorts, I'm just realizing how much I'm missing just having a rant of sorts or a stream of consciousness in a long form way. And so that's kind of what brought me back to doing this. And, maybe this episode's more so for content creators. It's just, and I'll try to find a way to maybe tie it back into something that's larger and like more applicable. Actually, I already know how I'm going to do that. But one other thing I wanted to mention too, just from a content creation standpoint, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, but this is going to be a long form episode, and it's going to be in a 9:16 aspect ratio. So a portrait aspect ratio. I'm not sure how that's going to do when you're playing like a video, which the native aspect ratio for that is 16:9 landscape. But just from a technical lens, it was trying to do this as a 4K piece. It was just really bogging down the workflow I have. I just need to be able to move swiftly from the filming, the transferring, the uploading, all that jazz. So I don't know. Hopefully that doesn't really affect. We'll just see. I don't know if I've ever seen a long form, show, piece of content that is done like that, but heck, we'll see. But I think the thread that I kind of want to, like the universal, I don't know, the application or like the theme that I'm seeing that's kind of agnostic of, this topic of content creation is just trying to find a different way into solving a problem. I think I've morphed how I've gone about doing this content maybe 3 or 4 significant times. And I'm really hopeful that this way is going to work out well, but, time will tell and just kind of see how it goes. But really the theme here is that there's always a different way and there's always a different way to solving a problem. And even as I'm saying that out loud, when I'm looking at other contexts of my life, it's just, there's always another way. It's hardly ever apparent. You got to be kind of creative in how you're looking at solving the problems that you're trying to solve. They don't have to be, you just have to have a creative mindset when it comes to solving, more complex problems. And also you kind of just have to have, I mean, this sounds cringy to say, I even hate to say this, but you really have to have some heart. You've really got to kind of, to say keep the faith is a little bit of a cringy thing to say, but you just have to keep going. And that's kind of tough. So, and that actually brings me to another thought of mine. So in case you didn't know, from the other long form episodes, I tangent a lot, but that's part of why I like doing this is that I can do that. And that's kind of how my brain works. So apologies for that hard cut right there. There was something that came up and quite frankly, I kind of lost my train of thought. But if I remember correctly of, where we were at was trying to kind of tie back some bigger principles, I guess, things that are more agnostic of content creation. And if I remember correctly, one of the things that I was talking about previously was, you kind of have to have a creative mindset to solve, a big complex problem. So, and I already talked about all that. So as I was talking about that though, I started thinking about, or another thought came to mind, which is the long walk. I'm pretty sure, I don't know, that might just be a nickname of sorts, but a buddy of mine, shout out to Brett, hopefully he's watching this. Let's do a show soon. That would be a lot of fun. But a buddy of mine, Brett, he sent me a podcast. It was with Rick Rubin and then somebody who was like a JSOC guy. And he was talking about with what his job was, or like his training to be in JSOC, kind of what one part of the training, and I think I might be getting this a little bit wrong. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I don't know if it was one time or multiple times that the training exercise was you would get a destination on a map, that's pretty far away, like 50 miles away. And you would have to figure out a way to get there. That's it by whatever means. But when you got there, you were really just told what your time was, and nobody told you if either you were doing well or doing bad, if you were the fastest time or the slowest time. And I mean, it has to happen. I'm sure it's got to happen repeatedly, because the point of the exercise is, what do you do as an individual when you don't get feedback, right? So, and if I remember correctly from the exercise, is that, if you truly did have a poor time, you were just cut from the team. And just, I remember when I was listening to that part of the episode where it's just, and I just remember when I was listening to that part of the episode, it was just like, wow, there's an organization of high performing people that one of the exercises is, how do you do over extended amounts of time of just not knowing how you are doing? I find that to be a really interesting thing. I think when I think about that, in all contexts, I'm not saying like it's a good or a bad thing, or I think I just think it's an interesting exercise, because in some instances you should give feedback to people, but also life generally writ large doesn't work that way. Like anything that you do, you don't know how it's going to go. I think that's a really important skill set kind of in life. But by that same token, or in that same breath, I think in some instances you got to give people the feedback, because I think it does satiate a certain part of the human soul or the human condition. And I think that that's important to keep people or teams motivated. But equally as much, those same people or teams need to, if they need to have that skill set to just continue to push on, even if they don't know what the outcome is going to be. So I thought that was a really fascinating idea. And yeah, so another thought that kind of came to mind as I'm doing this episode, and again, I tangent a lot, is talking beyond the point. I guess this is something that's kind of been on my mind I forgot where I heard it or whatever, but it's like, for me, definitely it's a problem that I struggle with, where I do kind of talk beyond the point, because I find just exploring ideas is just really, it's a fascinating thing. And maybe in other episodes I'll talk about why I tend to do that. I could talk about it right now, but that's just a whole other tangent of things. I know why, but I can kind of explain that at a later time. But, in as much as I acknowledge that that's a part of me and something that I tend to do and that I like to do, in some contexts, it's not good. I think, there's certain, situations or environments that call for more of kind of like a proclamation is probably I know it's the wrong word, but you need to take a definitive stance on something. And part of me thinks it's, that's right. Part of me thinks it's wrong. It depends on the context and all that stuff. But I just think it's something that I think people in general should be conscious of, especially people who are cerebral in nature, is just don't talk beyond the point. I think because not everybody thinks the way that you do, and it very easily could be misconstrued or misunderstood. So I think considering the context or the circumstance, be a little bit more, I guess, call it definitive in what you're saying. And then just even one last thought, and we can just probably end it here, is it's interesting because today I didn't do my speech exercises, and so my stutter is coming out a lot more now. And for those of you who are just tuning in to the show, or this is your first kind of introduction to this whole thing, and I think it's in episode 2 or 3 or something like that, but I've got a stutter that is not gnarly, but it's there. And what it ultimately is that my brain is moving faster than my body can keep up with, my mouth and my tongue. And so because of that, when I get to a word, sometimes I'll stutter But in order to mitigate the stutter, which I did it right then, is I'll say the word like, which is this kind of mental cue to my brain that, hey, the next word that you're going to say, I already know you're going to struggle on it. So, and it's called a crash word, where I'm going to say the word like, which gives my brain and my body a moment to slow down because I know what the next word is going to be. And then I can kind of start to slowly push the word out. And maybe I'll do another episode about that. But dude, it's exhausting. It's so tiring having to almost self-edit as you're talking. And it's so embarrassing when you're trying to present to a group of high-profile folks like executives and stuff, where you're just like, oh God, here it comes. And then you get kind of in your head about it. That's just another thought. And I don't know. It sucks. Maybe there's somebody who just stumbled onto, this episode in particular and has some thoughts or ideas on that, or wants to drop something in the comments. I would love that. Just knowing who else is out there that kind of struggles with all this stuff. But I think in the spirit of timeliness, because I did want to put a cap on how long I'm talking on this thing. Technically, I'm looking at the monitor here. I'm coming up to half an hour. I think after some post-production on here, I'm going to probably be at maybe 2 minutes or something like that. So I think that's a good place to end. And let's just bring this one home. I'm going to try to do this maybe every few days or so. And we'll kind of see how it goes. So thanks, everybody.